You've been up to so much good since we last spoke. You've got a new book out called Get on the Job and Organize. Can you just tell me, like, what is this? What was your inspiration? I'm assuming obviously you're an organizing background, but what are you calling for? Tell me about the book.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it because I think people don't understand how to organize a union in their own workplace. It seems like this really complicated, kind of secretive process, and not something that's easily accessible or that people can like really see themselves in. And so I wanted to demystify both the practice of organizing your own workplace, but also the tactic of salting, and which means getting a job with the goal of organizing it, which is something that I did at Starbucks. It's something that was foundational to the labor movement, from the beginning of the 1900s to the present, but it's not something that we're very good at talking about. And so I wanted people to be able to understand what it is, and also understand, if you have a job, you can organize it. If you can get a job, you can organize that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so you started in Buffalo, and I think when you were last on, I think you were either fired within a week or like it was right around the time that there was retaliation for your organizing. Um, and but I don't think I knew that you specifically got a job to then help organize the first Starbucks union effort in the country. Talk to me about what went into that thought like what led you to do that, and why do you think that more people maybe should be inspired to do something like that in the year 2025? This practice has been around for decades and decades.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I didn't have any exposure really to unions or the labor movement. I was a history nerd, and so I got really into the idea of, union history, Eugene Debs, the IWWs, but I thought unions had kind of stopped existing by the 1920s. My knowledge really didn't go into the present. So I ended up going to school in Mississippi. I had a labor journalism professor who was like, "Oh, you should meet my friend." Joe had been writing about the Nissan campaign where the UAW was trying to organize the Nissan factory. I got involved with that campaign doing student solidarity, and I met my organizing mentor, Richard Bensinger, who was also organizing baristas in upstate New York while commuting back and forth between Mississippi and New York working on these campaigns. So I ended up going to upstate New York after we lost the Nissan campaign. I wanted to stay involved with the labor movement. I was still kind of in awe that, oh my God, like this is the coolest thing ever. I can't believe I get to do this. I ended up working on a couple of coffee shop campaigns locally, including one called Spot Coffee, where we won a coffee shop chain in Buffalo and Rochester. And then Starbucks workers started reaching out. There were, a sort of a revolving door of workers who would work at one coffee shop and then go to the other one, friends, roommates, partners, tons of overlap. And so Starbucks workers started getting in touch. Hey, if Spot can do it, can we do it? One of those workers who I was working with got fired, and Starbucks claimed that it was for cussing at work. If Starbucks fired people for cussing at work, they would have zero workers because everybody cusses at work. But it was a pretext to get rid of someone who was talking union. And so that made me much more interested. I had always been interested in organizing a workplace where I was actually working and understanding what that was like. But that made me more interested in actually getting a job at Starbucks to try to prevent more workers from getting fired when they were trying to start a union campaign.
I mean, I love the way they shoot themselves in the foot of, doing some terrible cover to fire somebody who's clearly like interested in forming a union. And it's like that kind of retaliation is it's very galvanizing for first time organizers who, and so it's kind of like a ripe situation for you to get involved in. A lot has happened in these years, but can you tell me, I know it's like not clear and there's like a patchwork kind of different Starbucks unions, but what is the state of, the union drive within the Starbucks, franchise? I didn't ask, prep you on this, but just give us some sense of where things are at and where they stand.
Yeah, so I mean, Starbucks Workers United is still going strong. There's now getting close to 600 union stores around the country. The campaign, I think I have a lot of friends who are still deeply involved with bargaining. I guess backing up a little bit, Starbucks ran a scorched earth union busting campaign for about 3 years from when we won our votes at the initial stores in Buffalo through, many more years of unionization as workers were kind of slowly inching that number of union stores up. Starbucks initially, bargained in the worst possible faith, and then walked away from the bargaining table altogether. In 2023, after Starbucks Workers United took a stance in solidarity with Palestine, Starbucks faced a global boycott, and workers and consumers obviously stopped going to Starbucks. Entire countries like Malaysia and Turkey were cutting contracts with the company, and eventually that pressure brought Starbucks to the bargaining table. We'd always thought a boycott would be the way that Starbucks would come down. There were always mixed feelings, especially among union leadership, about calling for the boycott. It sort of started by accident through the Palestine solidarity situation and Starbucks' response and retaliation against the union for supporting Palestine. And so they announced about a year ago that they wanted to come back to the table and try to reach an agreement. That was before Trump got elected. I think now they're potentially looking around and thinking maybe they can get away with a return to their union busting. So it kind of remains to be seen. But
that's
yeah.
my next, question was about organizing under Trump. But I just wanted to stick with this piece of, we had Professor Eric Blanc, who has this new book, We Are the Union,
Yes.
who basically highlights, organizer like yourself who got involved in what seemed to them or seems on the outside to be a really complicated process of how to organize a union drive. And there's got to be, specific steps and all of this. And then there's folks like yourself, and there's, in so many different retail stores around the country who are just kind of doing the damn thing and starting where they are and are winning. And so one of the best, one of the angles that I love that he talks about, and he really highlights Starbucks in this, is that Starbucks having that sort of liberal veneer of like, yay, we accept like queer people here, yes, this can be like your little like refuge. Also, if you're a consumer, you can come and like hang, and if you're a student, like we support learning, like things like that, that then that, sort of was used as a way to be like, well, why aren't you actually good when it comes to workers' rights? Why aren't you good when it comes to, fair pay or giving us, more time off or our schedules or all of the, things that we're asking for? And so that was used against them. Whereas we're always sort of like learning or told that like, well, union drives are only based around, like your working class, identity, and it's only that. But it's like, it is more than that. It's about like, again, like people are for Palestine and using that as leverage. And so what are sort of maybe mislabeled cultural issues are also very much worker issues, and I feel like the Starbucks drives have proven that.
Yeah, I mean, I think workers understand, and at a range of companies understand, including less woke companies, quote unquote,
Yeah.
that the only way we're going to actually have liberation on these other issues, the only way we're going to have environmental justice, the only way we're going to have racial justice, the only way we're going to have trans and queer liberation is to have class-based liberation. And, I think we've seen pink washing attempts and every kind of washing attempts from all these companies for years. I think that's not really fooling. Maybe it never fooled everybody, but I think it's not fooling people, even to the extent that maybe people were attracted to it initially. But it's also true, I think, that companies that have wrapped themselves in this mantle of we're so progressive, we're so wonderful, whether it's Starbucks saying, we don't view you as workers, we think you're partners, or whether it's Ben and Jerry's, which actually did do the right thing and recognize the union. But whether it's Ben and Jerry's being like, we're so wonderful on all of these different issues, we want to participate in general strikes around, the climate crisis. Workers are likely to take that at its word, and also view the union as a way to not only hold companies accountable, but to take part in justice movements writ large, which means, you're not going to separate one fight from the other fights. These things are interconnected, and the union has to take part in all of these to live up to the very value of solidarity.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about maybe the Ben and Jerry's drive, and also Tesla and the stuff you're doing now at Workers United. Yeah, just break that down.
Yeah, so I guess just a quick clarification. I'm actually now, I'm not no longer with Workers United. I'm now working mostly with the Inside Organizer School, which is the training program that was the basis of the Starbucks campaign, where we train workers, both salts who are going to be getting jobs with the goal of organizing, and non-union workers looking to start an organizing campaign in their workplace, on how to actually get that process going, how to have the greatest chance of success, how to move the process quickly and try to
So
preempt the company's anti-union campaign.
you're a trainer now.
Partly trainer, and then I'm also
And
doing some work with the United Food and Commercial Workers on organizing campaigns, because I love actually being on the ground.
hell yeah, that's awesome. Okay, but okay, so you were at Workers United. What were some of the things that, yeah, like you're saying, Ben and Jerry's did the right thing. What's up with Tesla? What's going on? Anecdotally, I think someone who worked at SpaceX watches the program, or watched the program, hopefully they did or still do, and we're like, but this was before Trump won the election, and we're like, we hate Elon. This is terrible. We actually are good at what we do. He's terrible for our brand. So it's interesting that obviously, and we know Tesla's got a long history of union busting, and horrible workplace practices, racist firing, and all this kind of stuff. But any insight you can shed for us on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the playbook that Elon Musk is using against federal workers, trying to gut the federal government, is very much the same playbook that he's used against workers who've tried to organize, whether it's at Tesla or SpaceX, where, workers at both companies faced mass firings under orders from Elon. In Buffalo, I was working with workers at the Tesla plant in the autopilot department, who train the AI for self-driving cars. Mm-hmm. We were working together for about a year, trying to, get in touch with people, build a list, build an organizing committee, get ready to launch a union campaign. And these workers were incredible. I mean, they were motivated by every possible factor, ranging from the fact that, they were monitored down to the keystroke. They didn't have time to, even take bathroom breaks and meet the quotas that they were being forced to meet. Those same quotas actually make the product, the AI for the autopilot cars, less safe, because workers are forced to, take shortcuts to try to keep up with the workload. And that means that things could be slipping through the cracks. So they wanted more control over the pace, so that they actually had the ability to make it safer. They were very worried about Elon Musk himself. It was becoming increasingly apparent how right-wing, transphobic, et cetera, he was. And this was a very diverse group of workers, very young group of workers. So they went public with an organizing campaign on Valentine's Day, leafleted the plant with Valentine's Day leaflets about, we fight for what we love. The next day, Elon Musk fired 40 workers in retaliation for organizing. And the labor movement, meaning the folks at the very top of the very big unions, which were involved, which were the steelworkers and SEIU and the steelworkers, were more interested in arguing over who got credit, who got control of the campaign. And so the workers ultimately, we were trying to do everything we could on the ground, but the unions at the top didn't have the workers' backs.
I mean, that's an interesting corollary to, discussions we're having with Eric Blanc, that, it seems like the labor movement in its sort of, institutionalized form is not able to adapt to this moment that we're in a lot of ways, in terms of like the worker-led organizing drives, the drives that may not succeed, the ones that are just sort of, but that the energy is there. And, given the sort of top-down clunky nature of a lot of unions, it can be rough. I actually wanted to ask you, I mean, I think it's interesting you mentioned with Trump, and this is the last question, but with Trump and Starbucks being like, let's let's wait and see. Maybe we can give them free Starbucks, just like, Elon Musk will give Donald Trump a Tesla and he'll do an ad for them. We know, I think the NLRB, what is this? I believe it's still inoperable. I mean, unable to actually rule because there's not quorum.
Yeah, I think they're still in a legal process standoff.
Yeah. But I am also interested in, and this is the thing that's been like, and you don't have to come down on any, like, I'm not looking at you to like throw shade or talk, but I am curious because, we have the Seans, right? We've got Sean Fain of the UAW and Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters, and both of them in their different moments have seemed to want to give Donald Trump some credit or play ball. You got Sean Fain out here saying like tariffs could be a good thing. And they're, I was looking at an interview Sean Fain did with like, some hosts at MSNBC, and they were really talking past each other. I mean, the MSNBC host came off as super elitist and obnoxious and just like didn't understand. Sean Fain is out here like, okay, but I'm trying to get a win for my workers. Where do you see some of these plays to like try to appeal to Trump's, pseudo populist angels here?
I think it's an extremely misguided approach. I think I'd like to clarify, I think union top leadership isn't always, in touch with workers or with the goals of organizing. But I think there are really amazing, folks within labor unions. There's really amazing reform efforts and a lot of unions that are continuing. Obviously, one of the best ways to change the culture of a union is to organize more workers into it. And I think Workers United became a very different organization over the course of the Starbucks campaign because of this influx of new workers with very high expectations of what their union should stand for and believe in. I think it's extremely misguided to try to make a compromise with a fascist. I mean, the labor movement is built on solidarity. Our labor history has been checkered at times. There's always been unions that were, truly trying to organize all workers and, organizing across racial lines, across gender lines, et cetera. And then there's been, unions that were segregated by race, by gender, that were extremely nationalist or, didn't want to organize immigrant workers. And that conflict has been going on for as long as there's been a labor movement in the US.
Yes.
But I think labor unions rely and depend on solidarity. And, an injury to one is an injury to all isn't just a slogan. Like, we actually have to believe that. And we can't make deals with a regime that's trying to go after unions, trying to go after immigrant workers, and, trying to fundamentally strip so many people of our rights. And so I think it's extremely dangerous to go down that path.
I think that's really well said. And, I'm over the weekend also, I mean, the last week of these just heinous ICE raids, farm workers, specifically organizing farm workers, those who, again, trying to, fight for a better workplace and better working conditions, were detained and arrested. I'm not, I know there's Vermont, there were some. I'm trying to quickly scan, but this is a strategy. And so it's like, I definitely agree with you. Like, I understand the sort of self-preservation of wanting to strike a deal with Trump to be kind to your particular industry, UAW specifically. But it's like, it was so disappointing because I'm like, yeah, we're in this moment where like they are coming down on workers. Like, the people being detained are everyone's being detained.
Exactly.
Like, whether they're outside of Home Depot or whether they're at a meat processing plant or whether they're in a farm, they are attacking workers. And so what we need right now is actual solidarity. And so I'm so glad you said that. And, I think others have also said that on this program, like, this is the boss class we're talking about. Trump is the boss class.
If I could just add,
please.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, it's a very common union busting tactic for a company to call ICE to try to intimidate undocumented workers or, remove them from the workplace to prevent them from organizing. And I mean, the UAW is trying to get other unions to back them up in a general strike in 2028. But, I don't even know that we have until 2028. Like, but we have
Yes.
to be organizing in solidarity with the most marginalized, who are the people that Trump is going after the most. And so, yeah, everything you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I feel supported now that I've got now that Jazz agrees with me. I love having you on the program. You're fire. You're amazing. You're inspiring. Where can people get your book, and where can people get involved? I mean, where should they get involved? Can anyone sign up for the Inside Organizer School? Tell us.
Yes, no, thank you so much for having me. And I am on all social media at Jaz Brisack. And folks can order the book at any local bookstore, ideally a unionized bookstore if there's one near you. And then folks should definitely sign up for the Inside Organizer School. We're about to be posting training dates for the rest of the year around the country, both coasts, one in Nashville, Tennessee. So be on the lookout for that. We would love to have folks come. And we also work with a variety of unions around the country. So if people are interested in organizing their workplace or in potentially getting a job and organizing it, would love to get in touch. So yeah, reach out to me or to the Inside Organizer School, and yeah, would love to help more
Inside
folks get
Organizing School.
started.
Sorry, you broke up there. I want to salt at Chuck E. Cheese so my kid gets free Chuck E. Cheese, but I also don't want to deal with that much, germs. I would probably be sick constantly. But I definitely
You could
think
have
those
such a
those
great Scabby the Rat situation outside of a Chuck E.
dude, the
Cheese.
Scabby the Rat, right? With like Chuck Entertainment cheese. Oh, it's right there. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do it.